Well, I gotta watch it. The water's coming up high. Okay, let's begin. I'm gonna read from the Path of Wildness. Let me make sure the audio is hooked up just right. Yeah, looks good. But look at that. Wow, that water's coming up close. How about if I move it out a little further? Have a better view of the water. There you go. That's better. Okay, here we go. On the Path of Wildness, reading from my book, Going Alone, which is my strange tale of going out into life without seeking succor or solace, but just to see life on its own, and then trying to reconcile that. Then what is found of such an adventure? Okay, so let's open up the book, The Path of Wildness. It's easy to find. It's the course of a stream, leaves blown in the wind, a beast's track through the brush, and the direction of our first inclination. Oh, where is it? Not that one. Not that one. I can't find the chapter in my own dang book. The Anxiety Hike and then the Path of Wildness. Oh, there it is. Okay, here we go. So the chapter opens with an illustration by my daughter. That's the Path of Wildness right there. It's actually a real place out in the desert by the Siberia Ghost Town. You can see the chapter opens with the title, subtitle, a quote by Nathaniel Hawthorne, and then we'll get into it. So let's begin. The Path of Wildness, mustering the courage to live. Persons who have wandered or been, here's the quote. Oh my gosh, that's a big wave. Persons who have wandered or been expelled out of the common track of things, even were it for a better system, desire nothing so much as to be led back. They shiver in their loneliness, be it on a mountaintop or in a dungeon. That's by Nathaniel Hawthorne. When I read that, I realized that he had captured exactly the sentiment that I had experienced myself in doing this adventure, and I had to add it to this chapter. This chapter was originally composed in Japan, and before I began going alone in earnest. I wrote The Path of Wildness in response to the many young people who contacted me during my time as a Japan-based YouTube content creator. Young people dreaming of Japan, yet unable to muster the courage or resources to make their dream real, and writing to ask me how this trick was done and what advice I could offer to help them get away from whatever unsatisfactory life they were living. I responded with The Path of Wildness, which is a metaphor for courage and action, and a reminder of the risk of waiting too long, and a challenge and method for getting unstuck. So I wrote this chapter as an email. Well, originally people would write to me. I would be living in Japan. I had my YouTube channel. I'd be out wandering around and adventuring and exploring. And people would write to me. Sometimes they would just leave comments asking this, or they would write to me emails and say, how did you do this? How did you manage as a non-Japanese, as an American guy with a family no less, to wind up living in such a wonderful place like Shizuoka and wandering the Japan Southern Alps and exploring and making videos and all that kind of stuff, and how can, they were wondering because they wanted to do something themselves. And I found I was writing back to them, and I would explain to them the steps that I used to make that happen. And I found that after a while I was writing the same email over and over to the people increasingly in number that would write to me asking the same question, typically young men in their mid to early 20s with those questions. and there was a definite demographic there. Every now and then I'd get a woman that would write, but mostly it was young men in their early 20s. And I realized after I'd written like the 10th or 15th such letter, such email, that there was the theme here, and that to save myself time, I should compose a response and use that as a template, and I could just pack that in. It wasn't an email that I would respond back to, but it was like a little document. I could say, oh, thank you for writing. I would respond to the email, thank you for writing. Actually, I've encountered this question before. Here's my standard response to this. It felt like a kind of like a template, but it was so common, the questions were so often the same that it made sense, like an FAQ in a way. After a while, that became the Path of Wildness. I refined it and I improved it over time, and it became basically a response FAQ that became like a document on my computer that eventually became the seed that launched this book. So this chapter was the initial thing that spurred me to write Going Alone. And it wasn't until I actually got back to America and went out into the desert by myself repeatedly, as you know the story, if you're familiar, if you followed my activities on YouTube, that I realized I had the seed of a book. And I didn't actually intend to write a book. I didn't even intend to include the Path of Wildness in here until I had started writing other things, and I realized, oh, that essay that I wrote back in Japan fits. It fits, and it doesn't fit. It's not the first chapter. It's kind of like about a third of the way through the book. And so here it is. Let's carry on. I gotta keep a close eye on these waves. And the way that this chapter is broken out is a series of sections. You can see right here, like here's the first one, the Path of Wildness right there, and then a whole essay about that. And then, you know, the next one is the problem, you know. So it's like a problem statement, like as an analyst that I do. I state what it is that I'm attempting to do. I identify the problem that I'm attempting to solve, the business case, so to speak, and then some constraints, and then a solution. Geez, I didn't realize that until just now. I was basically being a project manager when I wrote this. Here we go. The Path of Wildness. As I near 50, I'm becoming increasingly aware that my situation is like a man holding his breath in a sealed container of water with less than a minute of consciousness remaining. Now is the time to scratch something meaningful on the wall, to share what I have seen and learned. And here's the poem I recited by memory just a moment ago. And you can see, and this poem pops out throughout the book, right? It's basically the theme. And I remember writing this. I was coming down a mountain, way up in the mountains out of Shizuoka. And I remember coming down this farm trail. Some of you may remember my white whale hike. I was on a failed attempt to get the white whale. And I came down and these words just popped into my head and I wrote them down. And now they appear throughout the book. They basically encapsulate the whole book in one shot. Here we go. The Path of Wildness is easy to find. The course of a stream, leaves blown in the wind, a beast's track through the brush, and the direction of our first inclination. The Path of Wildness is an answer and response to a prescribed way of life which may leave some individuals with a sense that their living is little more than a series of predetermined step-like episodes between birth and death. The stages of living between these events, childhood, adolescence, adulthood, parenthood, and senior, are themselves natural and in accord with the needs of the species and most individuals. Many find satisfaction in living this course, and to these individuals, I have little to say. Others, though, long for something more, something innate, genetic, and seemingly calling. Adventure and change can give a degree of satisfaction and relief, yet even these may seem too tame, and the results only temporary, often only temporary. To those who feel drawn to something beyond the entertainment and stimulation of senses, I offer a walk along the Path of Wildness. Don't bother penciling the event into your schedule, preparing a pack with goodies and supplies, or even inviting a friend along, for this experience is along the course of your first inclination, and you must surely always go alone. And then here's the next bit. Here's the problem statement. I didn't realize this. I was being a total analyst when I wrote this. That's how, as a project manager and analyst, that's how I work. I identify the problem first and then map out solution options, assumptions, pros and cons, and then pick a solution. Here, I was doing it before. I was doing that then. The problem, it even says the problem. The problem, life has no apparent meaning. My adventure videos on YouTube have produced a steady stream of email from people who tell me about their dreams they cannot quite bring themselves to live, and their fear of being alone and feeling their lives do not matter. However, nobody ever says it that way, and instead they cloak these worries as simple life anxieties, or blame their trepidation and inaction on various personal or familial infirmities and challenges. They do this to convince themselves these simple facts are the true cause of their churning worry and hesitation. They attempt to avoid a deeper fear, a hidden threat which is more real and threatening to a quality life than any surface level anxiety. It is a demon of sorts, lurking in the shadows of conscious thought, peeking with knowing eyes in the direction of our mortality, pointing a crooked finger at the hazy terminal point of our life, while offering a suggestive grin that nothing will be found beyond. This thought, along with the weighty implication it bears that life is without intrinsic meaning, appears to be the more real and tactile cause of the concern I sometimes read in the words of those who write to me. I never point this out, though, as I suspect they prefer I go along with their bluff and humor them with a response in keeping with their stated concern. Reality, after all, can be a fearful thing to face. However, I will now attempt a more honest answer, reflective of my own life experience and sincere interactions with others. This light and living we now know offers a stark contrast to the nothingness we fear a return to after life is done. In fact, this fear is far worse than a return to nothingness, as we are each capable of holding a vision of hell in our minds more terrible and real than the worst damnation preached from any austere and authoritative pulpit. This greater terror is our sense that the universe can get along without us, that our life and living are of little real consequence in any way, and that our best efforts will account for little beyond the temporary comfort given to the handful of individuals we share and interact with before death takes us away utterly, permanently, and forever. This is the real terror so many struggle to avoid, which reason and honest inquiry coldly suggest as true, an abject fear of ultimate insignificance and meaninglessness in the face of the curious fact of temporary life in an otherwise lifeless universe. I do not understand why the thought of death, real death, absolute death, with no chance of recovery, salvation, or continuation, I should have added remembrance to that list, is more tolerable to some than others. However, I suspect this acceptance may relate to some level of comfort and familiarity with being alone. Not that anyone will be alone after death, as even the concept of alone then would be wishful thinking. Nevertheless, during life, if we can abide our own company for extended periods of time, then the thought of being without others, or ourselves even, after death, may somehow become more palpable and acceptable. A more familiar, intangible something, and somewhere less feared as accepted, or perhaps resigned to. To such a person, a life without absolute meaning may be acceptable. Days, months, and years of striving to no absolute end, all right, and nothing to fear. To such an individual, the journey itself becomes its own purpose. The momentary satisfaction and good feelings connected with virtue their own worthy end, where virtue is defined simply as the pursuit of objective well-being for ourselves and others. Death then offers no transition, but is seen as a simple, final stop, a period and ending of effort and of striving and of reflection towards understanding which yields nothing more than transitory and ultimately meaningless gain to ourselves and those to follow. But is this a bad thing? If yes, then it's understandable that many may protest, recoil, and fly from such thoughts. But if no, then our breathing can relax as we measure each inhalation as one of the few we get, and use the fuel of this living to move our body and activate our brain in such a way as to create our own meaning in these passing moments, and to pursue objective goodness in the willful expression of perceived best ends. So, what words can I say to those who write to me asking my thoughts regarding their worldly dilemmas, when my suspicion tells me their real concern is actually a fear of their own unimportance and the utter finality of death? In most cases, I will engage their most direct questions and give the best answer and suggestion I can, given my untrained and uncredentialed qualifications. I wish, though, that I could speak to them more plainly and tell them that their deeper fears are real, and then ask them to explain their terror for my own benefit, and then hear my claims, which I hope may benefit them. Perhaps then we could both gain from a more honest and humane inquiry and inquisition into facts than any civilized, restrained, or judicial discourse could provide. For my part, I am now prepared to lay my humble case before any who may care to hear. This is the part of the book of this chapter in particular, that I didn't ever write. I never responded to anybody, in fact, when they wrote to me, but then when I wrote this chapter to add to the book, I added it. I said, finally, at last, I can say what I wanted to say. This is the part that I wanted to say. Opportunity, available light, that's the heading. Mind is an instantiation of consciousness, formed of energy, organized within the brain along pathways designed of genetics and molded through the unique living of each individual. There is no soul in the sense of anything transcendental or eternal. The fact that our materials and energy are everlasting, having been used by others before us and destined for reuse by the yet unborn, is testament to the fact that our person is temporary and ephemeral. We are, individually and collectively, a brief, dim, and fast-fading spark and flash of material and energy in the darkening night of the universe. In this fact, we discover both our dilemma and great potential. The challenge being to remain upright in the face of our utter, fleeting insignificance, while engaging whatever meek will we can muster towards observation, reflection, and art, while the light and sound of the universe wash across our senses. Without apparent purpose, we are left to decide for ourselves whatever meaning or significance should guide our days and actions. This is the great dilemma of the individual, which demands forthright acceptance of the facts of the observable universe and withholds any complete explanation or guidance. You must stand alone. You must recognize your solitude. You must hold yourself upright despite unstable footing and the approach of death. You must withstand the awful winds growing stronger and control your trembling hands while strange howling emanates from the wilder places and no trail or trodden path indicates the direction of safety. From here, if you can quiet the heart and gain control of your senses, overcome or learn to tolerate feelings of isolation, loneliness, and fear, then you will be prepared to make your own one-way path through the wild, to step where the weeds are tangled and small, biting creatures lurk with hairy legs, slicing jaws, and venomous sting. This is your path to follow, a truly dangerous and terrifying route none has ever trod or may ever again follow. The light is faint now, and growing fainter as the evening and night of your days grows near. Follow the dusk and note the sights. Speak of what you see. Describe your world in writing, or painting, or photography, or spoken word. Poetry, especially, is a natural and well-suited vehicle to capture this ever-declining experience. Walk your path and observe, and then tell the story of your own brief, available light. Okay, the next is the heading, Health, Exercise, and Eating Well, and a quote by Kant. Wisdom is an organized life. Your good philosophy depends upon your body, which relies upon your health, which rests upon the choices you make as to exercise and what you eat and drink. Devote some time early in life to an understanding of what makes good bodies, and then take care of yourself accordingly. What follows is a summary of my own imperfect exercise and diet solutions. I exercise daily. However, my exercise routine is light, easy, and requires little time. my base workout is a 15-minute pool swim. Now I swim in the ocean instead every day. My swimming style is very low impact. I do a gentle breaststroke for 5 laps and another 5 laps backwards breaststroke, alternating these two styles between each lap. The backwards breaststroke is something a swim instructor taught me and involves simply resting face up on the water like you would do with a conventional backstroke. Though instead of reaching back over your head to do a reverse crawl, simply lift your arms to your sides while keeping your arms in the water, before then stretching out your arms to give a nice stroke until your hands are again at your waist, like this. And your arms parallel to your body. This stroke takes a little practice, but when you have got it down, the process is easy. The swim is low impact and very relaxing, as you can look up at the sky while gliding gently through the water. I especially enjoy this swim in the evening at sundown, when I can watch the first stars twinkle into view as the azure Southern California sky fades to black. When enjoying this backwards breaststroke, just beware you do not bang your head on the far end of the pool as your mind floats off with the clouds, which I've done several times. Like I said, I don't do the swim anymore because I live here at the beach, so I swim right here, right in front of Lifeguard Tower 18, every day after work, and on the weekends in the evening. I like to get here at sundown. It's a good way to close the day. As mentioned, my swim is my base exercise, and I do this every day. However, I also enjoy walking to provide a lower body workout. To this end, I typically walk between 2 and 4 miles daily, either spread out over several small walks, like a fast mile during my breaks at work, or one very long walk at the start or end of the day. If, for whatever reason, I need to skip some exercise, it will usually be my walks, as the swims are not optional and can only be missed for reasons such as illness or lack of access to a pool. Rain or cold weather are no good reasons not to swim. So now that's the reverse. If anything, I skip the swim now. Usually I'll only skip the swim if the waves are really, really big, or if there's been a lot of rain and sometimes there's pollution that might be in the water from the rivers. But I walk more now. I walk about 5 miles a day now. And usually with my wife, we take a nice long walk in the lunchtime and then a real long walk in the evening before dinner. So here now there's something called Kurt's Imperfect Diet. It's basically the diet that I was eating at the time that I wrote this chapter. Now it's changed. My diet has changed since then, but this is just fine. My diet's simpler now. Kurt's Imperfect Diet, and a subnote, but much better than what I was doing before. 5 a.m. Wake up and drink a glass of water. Not anymore, it's 4 a.m. now. 5:15 a.m. Shave, shower, and then drink a blended vegetable smoothie made of kale, spinach, broccoli, carrot, beets. Note, I blend 4 glasses of this mixture ahead of time, which I keep in the fridge. I do not add anything to the smoothie other than the above ingredients and a little water or lemon juice to help get the blending started. 5:30 a.m. Single large fried egg with a slice of buttered whole wheat toast, which I share with the dog while watching the news on TV. None of that anymore. I just eat a bowl of oatmeal, no water or anything, just a little bit of honey in there, and I don't share it with the dog, or dogs now, we have 2. I just eat it by myself. 8 a.m. Large mixed salad, same ingredients used in the smoothie, but with 2 handfuls of nuts and dried berry trail mix. I sometimes use lemon juice for dressing. I don't do that anymore. 11:30 a.m. Bowl of homemade chili with a slice of whole wheat bread. I make a huge vat of chili every other Sunday, which I then portion out during the weeks to follow. The chili consists simply of a variety of beans and lots of finely chopped veggies. I season with a tablespoon of cumin and another tablespoon of chili powder. I still do that. Every 2 weeks on a Saturday or Sunday, I'll make a big batch of chili and then freeze it and then portion it out over 2 weeks. 3 p.m. Small bowl of lightly salted popcorn as a midday snack. I pop a week's worth of popcorn on Sunday nights, which I then store in my cubicle at work. An alternative to the popcorn is a few slices of unsulfured and unsweetened dried mango. Over time, the mango has almost come to replace the popcorn. I don't do that anymore at all. I just have a little scoop of nuts that I'll have nibble throughout the day. Oh, and Yumiko delivers me a nice cup of green tea every morning around 9:30 in the morning. She's very sweet about that. Delicious Shizuoka green tea from Japan. 6 p.m., enjoy another smoothie, same as above. No, I don't do that anymore. 8 p.m., prepare and enjoy a healthy dinner. I prepare like I prepare. I don't make anything. Yumiko makes dinner. Prepare and enjoy a healthy dinner. I am lucky as my wife is an excellent cook and she makes outstanding Japanese meals. She makes outstanding Japanese meals for our dinner. I eat as much as I like of whatever she makes, which is always good and healthy and satisfies whatever want of gluttony may linger at the end of the day. I still do that. She makes the best meals. I tell her over and over every night practically. She's sick of hearing it. Her meals are her dinner is the high point of my day. I just love it. Have a little glass of wine and just get a little tipsy from my one glass of wine. I'm a real lightweight. And I watch Midnight Diner, my favorite Japanese show, and I cry because it touches me every time, and I drink my little glass of wine with my dogs while Yumiko cooks dinner, and then she comes and delivers it. We watch something together. We have YouTube videos we like to watch together. It's the best part of the day. It's like it makes the whole... I told her yesterday, we were talking about Japan, and we were talking about, she was asking me, Kurt, what's your routine going to be like in Japan when you're retired, you've got your days to yourself? You know, what are you going to do? And she was challenging me to think about it, and she was doing the same thing. And I said, I need time to think about it, but whatever it is I'm going to do, it's going to revolve around our dinners and our evenings together, which is the high point of every day. It's like this wave's crashing. The peak moment is dinner with my wife, and then I crash to sleep, and then the next day wake up again and start it all over again. That seemed to make her smile. Okay, that's the end of the bulleted list. This menu is my own and reflects my limited sensibilities regarding taste. I am sure that someone more adept in the kitchen might find better and more satisfying alternatives. Of key importance here is the absence of processed foods, sugary drinks, or excessive sweets of any sort. I do allow myself an occasional fast food meal with my family, almost never ever anymore, and an infrequent indulgence in salty snacks such as chips or sweet desserts, no chips. Oh, actually we did. We got some corn chips yesterday, in fact. Or sweet desserts. Yeah, we have that. We have little manju, sometimes from the Japanese market, like a cookie or a piece of candy. Popcorn at the movies is a must, but we don't go to the movies anymore, as well as a few other simple and periodic indulgences which help to give my life spice and interest without taking away too much from my efforts at eating well. As for drinks, I limit my intake of coffee to no more than 2 cups a day, really 1 cup now, 3 if I'm writing, and I try to avoid fruit juice, too much sugar, and sodas, absolutely. A beer or glass of wine are fine in the evening, though these seem to hold less appeal for me with each passing year. That remains the case. I can barely drink at all anymore. Starbucks is a must. My favorite is a grande-sized extra hot mocha with 2 pumps of syrup and whipped cream. I've switched to latte now. I don't like it sweet. After all, everyone's gotta have an indulgence or two to punctuate the serious and difficult work of living well. I occasionally enjoy this particular treat in the evening after work when I sit down to answer my personal email, as I find the sugar caffeine boost to be a nice stimulation to my improved human response. Now, I answer my email in the morning now. I cannot emphasize enough how important I have found diet to be in the pursuit of a happy, balanced life. I was 47 years old when I developed this diet and sadly spent so many years feeling tired, anxious, irritable, unproductive, and downright unhappy before I learned the very common sense fact that what I ate and drank and how much I moved impacted greatly the biochemistry of body and mind. If you choose to attempt only one aspect of my proposals in this book, then I recommend the adoption of a healthy diet and light program of exercise as the thing to do. Gosh, I can't believe how many decades I wasted my well-being on poor eating habits. Goodness gracious. What's that seagull got over there? Okay, the next section is titled Action, Path of Wildness. So that it is a friggin' business systems analyst business case, right? Business case, assumptions, and then that's what I did with all of that, and now action. Here's the project plan. Action, the path of wildness. So now after all that, this. Once healthy and in a position of understanding regarding the possible deeper fear and trial which makes life such a challenge to those who wish to live a meaningful life, as well as peace of mind when thinking of what apparently does not follow when life is through, you may then be ready to act in the direction of wisdom. Indeed, you may be prepared to rise to your full stature as a man or woman of reason, to apply this faculty towards the higher, perhaps more seemingly worthy acts of a well-lived life. This, then, is the time to step upon the path of wildness. And again with the quote, or the poem. The path of wildness is easy to find. I'll show it to you. I know this one by memory. The path of wildness is easy to find. The course of a stream, leaves blown in the wind, a beast's track through the brush, and the direction of our first inclination. Do not mistake the concepts of wildness, of wilderness and wildness, which are related yet distinct terms. Wilderness is the place commonly regarded as devoid of most human influence. Stretches of desert in the American West, the far reaches of the Arctic and Antarctic, and most areas of the Earth's oceans are good examples of wilderness. Few such places on Earth remain utterly untouched by humanity, though many are nevertheless quite wild and capture the spirit and essence of regions where humans are more alien than familiar. Wildness, on the other hand, is the landscape of freedom. Wildness is less a place and more a region of uncertainty, risk, and very real danger. Wildness is a feature of wilderness, though it is entirely possible for a well-trained, outfitted, and prepared human to enter wilderness without venturing very far into wildness. However, those who step into wildness may do so without ever leaving their home. In fact, they may enter wildness from the comfort of their recliner or in the company of friends and family, though in practice, wildness is most easily accessed through wilderness, which is one of the reasons I have spent so much of my life alone in the outdoors. Wow, there's a huge school of fish right off the shore there. Excuse me, swirling right there in the water. How interesting. Why should someone venture into wildness? Why risk the danger, isolation, and fatigue of exploring alone, even among others, where chance or bad choices may leave you crippled or mortally wounded? There are several benefits which vary in degree, depending upon the character and interest of the explorer, though one benefit is of special use to all, as it grants to the user a most useful skill and habit, in which, through training, can transform the timid, fearful, and meek into brave, spirited explorers. That quality is simply the character of courage in the face of the unknown, and a willingness to step boldly into seemingly dangerous regions of ignorance and uncertainty, to confront our weakness and shortcomings in open field where neither can hide and must instead be viewed for what they really are, and once surveyed, then likely dismissed as unworthy intimidators, whom we order to stand aside as we stride past into the deeper darkness and cold. Oh, how many times I've done that. Not pride nor unwholesome confidence. That's not bragging. I'm just sharing with you that I wrote that particular line from dead experience. Dead experience means spot on, solid experience in doing that. It's scary. Not pride nor unwholesome confidence shall replace these fears, as these two cannot fail to fall away during our struggle through the wild places. Good luck. Indeed, most superfluous human traits are vulnerable to being lost along the way, as the close cutting branches, vines, and thorns pull away everything which sticks out from our person, and which is not essential to our truer character and inner strength. This is the singular gain and ambition of movement along the path of wildness, to wear away our excess, refine our better spirit, and help us develop and maintain the courage necessary to live well as long as the light continues to shine in our eyes. The path of wildness is easy to find. The course of a stream, leaves blown in the wind, a beast's track through the brush, and the direction of our first inclination. I have described the path with the above words deliberately in order to leave clues in the commonplace experience of nature which are easy enough to follow, and as a simple training of sorts for the more challenging foray of trust in our personal instinct. I have a reason for relying on instinct, though I understand that instinct is not always right, and in fact may often be quite wrong and dangerous. Nevertheless, Despite the risks, instinct is something we all seemingly have, and a sense we can start with when doubt and uncertainty threaten to immobilize our movement. There are times for rest and times for action, and most of us can easily sense when change is needed, though sometimes we lack the will or conviction to make the first step. It is at such times as these that I recommend moving boldly onto the path of wildness. This is done by probing our immediate senses for a hint of which way to go. And as long as the urging does not cause us to walk over a cliff in our first step, steps and cliffs are, of course, figurative in many cases, then we should lift our foot and begin moving, or lift our will and push forward with thought, resolve, voice, intention, or whatever form of human living might be involved. Interaction, not intention. We move, we start, we have direction. It may not be the best direction, but courageous movement away from irrational fear or unwarranted timidity is often its own reward, and course correction can usually be made once we are underway. Once upon the path, the brave explorer should expect two things: danger and treasure. The first is very real and may wound, cripple, or even kill. Expect to emerge from your foray bleeding, lame, and perhaps a bit deranged for the experience. Yet, a wholesome perspective might view such damage as nothing more than the expected price of discovering treasure where none like you has ever ventured. New explorers may hope, and likely succeed, in carrying away fresh wealth in the form of possessions, status, or acclaim from the lonely wild lands. These can indeed be had, in abundance in fact, though the glitter and sparkle of such tangible gain may appear as rust to those who go still further in search of the intangible treasures of mind and experience. These brave individuals will most likely return from their ventures exhausted to the point of collapse, pale with blood loss, and slightly mad from the close proximity they achieve to the source of the terrifying howling, which can only be heard in the most extreme frontiers of dark and bleak wildness. Their pockets will certainly be torn and empty, and they may be unable to speak clearly of the wonders they have seen, though this is less due to any defect in the speaker's voice, and, more commonly, is the result of the hearer's excess comfort and certainty, which blocks the ears to truth as surely as beeswax. I recommend applauding anyone who returns alone from the wildlands, whether they bear treasure in both arms or gleaming ear to ear within the broad expanse of a blessed mad smile. Do this, for each is a person of courage, someone who has broken clean of the quicksand of complacency and fear, and who is exercising those most rare and critical faculties of the human species: courage, freedom, and autonomy. But remember also that some who step upon the path will never return. Some will become lost. Others will die. Still more may give up and return by some secret way to rejoin those who, in fear, remain huddled together in warmth and comfort and possibly some degree of lifelong despair. These are the things you can expect upon the path of wildness. Go then when you feel lost. Step fast when you suspect your confusion or hesitancy or are heeding some unworthy instinct and are born of the fear of suffering and not suffering itself. Move swiftly now in the direction of your first instinct. Call your best critical faculties to the fore and demand they guide your every footfall. Expect to tire and fall. Be ready to suffer. Understand that you may die, though know also that along the way, with every step and action, you are living the truest, most noble, and worthy venture of your life. The last part here is called result, creating meaning. So this is the concluding part. Those who venture upon the path of wildness will find a meaning of sorts in the energy, joy, and experience of living a life of courage, a life of periodic misstep, mistake, and failure, tempered with breakthrough, discovery, and understanding. Taken together, these qualities cause life to acquire a depth and character which is humbling, satisfying, and reassuring. Our living becomes a beautiful sum of many parts, sour, sweet, bitter, raw, and savory. A delicious banquet of days which fills our mind like a feast fills our stomach and gives us pause along the way, and in the end, to rest in sated comfort at the fullness of our life. Oh, that's exactly how life feels now at the cusp of 60. I don't mean to brag, but it does have that yield and benefit. And then there's a concluding bit here. So that was the result. This is the concluding bit called Notes from My Muse. What follows after all of that, and almost every chapter in the book has that, is there's this section that I call them muse strikes. You can see them here laid out here and there. They're italics, and there's little tilde marks that separate each one of them. And these are just ideas that came to me as a result of my thinking along the way. And they came to me all of a sudden. Like I couldn't even really think them through. Or come up with them on my own. And as almost like they're gifted from somewhere else. Now I know they're not. I know they're just the result of the conspiracy of my brain under certain circumstances. But I separate them out. The standard prose here, this is the writing. I have to work hard at that. These muse strikes, I don't have to work hard at that at all. I just have to record it as it comes. And you see there's literally page after page of them, one after the other. And I'm going to go ahead and read those now. It goes on forever. So it's like a record of, it's like a little bit like poetry. And I think I saw a comment there. Is that from Andy? That flash fast. Oh, there. Yeah, hi Andy. Hey Kurt, I just wanted to thank you for the copy. I had forgotten to do so over the busy week, and your book sits on my favorite bookshelf. I am tuning in. Oh, well, I'm so glad that the book arrived. Glad to hear it, and I wish you all the best. Let me know if you have any questions, Andy. Okay, so now there's a little bit of prose summary of what that section's about, and then we'll jump right into it. And this is going to be long and go on for a long time. It's kind of just me blah blah, but this is for me it's kind of the most substantive and mysterious part of the whole process of creativity, is where these words come from and how spot on they are. They never require editing. The poetic part of this journey was one that just kind of it touches something deep inside that just knows what it wants to say the first time. Notes from my muse. I wrote the following verses during an early period of inspiration from my muse. While still living in Japan and under the influence of the green, lush, watery, and very wild and geologically young mountains of the Japan Southern Alps, where I'll soon be living again. The words and phrases here are much simpler than what comes to me now in the desert, conveying less my thoughts about the great indifference, which I had not yet recognized in nature, and more simply, my paradoxical understanding that there may be no living after life is done, and that the universe holds no precious mandate for our lives other than to simply stay alive as long as we can, and perhaps to pass our genes into another generation. The words below were originally augmented with images, which you can see at the web address in entry 7 of the book's appendix. I wonder if that's still right, because I made some changes to the appendix. Yeah, still there. So when I wrote these, the muse strikes, or blurbs, as I call them, from the muse, that I wrote out in the desert were much longer and more detailed and more focused on the great indifference and the whole concept of going alone, the whole adventure of going alone. These ones, this was back in Japan when I was still rambling around in the mountains. Most of what I wrote here was way up in the mountains, in those high cloudy areas, or I would really be alone walking on those farm trails, and these words would suddenly come to me and I'd write them down. I had no concept of where I was headed with the journey. I didn't even know that America was in my future when I wrote these. But so they're consider them as preliminary reconnaissance of what I would later find in the desert. Here we go. I'll just read them and I'll put in a little pause between each one so you'll know that there's the tilde in the pause. I'm moving on. Here we go. No dragons here, only darkness. You know, I just realized something. These are more reflective of like poetry, of like Japanese haiku, which is very short and brief. They're not haiku, but I wonder if that's reflective of the fact that I was in Japan, that they're so brief and simple. That's all there is. No dragons here, only darkness. What I meant by that was that there's nothing supernatural in what I was encountering at that time. Just the dark emptiness that I would later recognize as the Great Indifference. This is a preliminary foresight of the Great Indifference before I had even addressed it or recognized it or named it. No more purpose than to outlive ourselves, and then really not even that. By that I mean having children. I stand alone in the cold. Mount Wildness is a place more terrifying than fear, more remote than the unknown, for it is both. There are no fresh starts, only new steps. There are no bridges here where streams are cold and fast. Mount Wildness is the landscape of fear, a truly dangerous place. There's a woodsman's cabin on the near slope of Mount Wildness, abandoned many years. Go alone, and any road can become a path. After a certain point, we all begin to dissolve. The blessing of becoming lost. Ordinary light becomes strange, and stranger still. Innocence renders the initial step unnecessary, for youthful movement is from the very first intuitive, earnest, and seemingly irrevocable. Sometimes go where you do not want to go. Mount Wildness is a dark place, full of light. Oh yeah. If you fear dark places, then stay where you are. Otherwise come where none can be your guide. Let wildness guide, never trust it to lead, lest you never return. Move or stop if you are so inclined. Have courage for either action. The map of indecision. Any road can become the path. Time and distance must always impart change. Too long or far, and friends become strangers. Longer still, foreign, and longer yet, alien. The features on your face trace the course of the path. Attitude, coupled with action, cause the path to appear. Push into the haze, expecting nothing more than an opportunity to become lost. Faces become strange, too long on the path. Get busy before the curtain starts to fall. Geez, that hits me home right now. Wow. At this point in my life. One step and you're on the path. That's true. If I do say so myself. Precedence is abhorrent to those upon the path. Those who stare very long at the light must surely go blind. Either course will do. The light is not an end. Companionship is a warm distraction. The path is outside, though not always outdoors. Tunnels aren't dark enough. Find another way. The path runs through the machine. Bridges aren't real. Find another way. A single step is sufficient. The way is clearer still under cover of night. Keep walking. The sun is setting after all. When I was 18, ideas flashed past my consciousness too fast and fleeting to catch or even properly apprehend. At 28, I squeezed them from my mind with crayons and loud music. Raw, textured notions, wholly adolescent and shaped like a cliché. 38 allowed no time for such nonsense. 48 finds the ideas return, though now I'm too tired and fed up to attempt to lead, and instead follow meekly wherever the sunlight moves, seeking warmth and thoughtful respite in whatever time remains. Wow, what a change it's been since 48. I'm 58, 59 now, almost 60. I don't feel like that anymore at all. I feel young and energetic again, except my body doesn't always behave that way. Mine is. Instilling fear and the suspension of critical thinking are the methods of those who themselves fear and refuse to think. Refugees of reason, huddled in the dark, begging company and offering stale sustenance, if only you'll acquiesce. Solitary strides are longest. Only individuals can have courage, for the group can never truly be brave. If you ever doubt your way and question right or left, choose the darker, dense, and overgrown route, for this is where your ignorance is thick, and where passage will surely come at a price. Wildness is found wherever courage provokes another step. The path of wildness is a solution for those not seeking escape. The slant of sunlight and shadow also mark the way. Expect curves upon the path. Only life can traverse the path. The path of wildness is a hiking philosophy and a theory of adventure. I'd offer my hand as guide, only then we'd lose our way. Shadows lie along the path. Shadows point the way. The darker, the better. You know what I realized? I realized that I needed to write all this stuff to catalyze my efforts when I finally got back to America and was faced with Siberia Ghost Town. Okay, the volcano wilderness was easy. But Siberia Ghost Town and going to the edge of deep water, that was hard. And if I hadn't written all of this back then when I did, I don't know that I would have had the courage to drop down over that top, down into that edge that I call the deep water wilderness, and then would have encountered the great indifference. I wonder if really all of this was just a big exercise for me to have the strength to continue forward. That's what it feels like now. That's what it reads like. The path of wildness is purely secular and in no way spiritual. Biology is the defining and controlling factor. There is no sentience guiding our steps, save perhaps the collective experience encoded in our genes. Thoughts grow feral on the path of wildness, linger long, utterly wild. I expect to die here, and soon. I still do. I'd like to share with you a great recipe for solitude. Simply talk, act, think, or believe unlike others. Beware the far side of Mount Wildness, where our words become babble. The only streams here are cold, fast, and treacherous. There's a howling on the mountain, something worthy of fear. I fear no social circumstance, for I've been to Mount Wildness. There's a howling in the darker brush. The old shack at the end of the road. Ooh, I still get the shivers thinking about that one, or reading that one. To walk the path, because I've been to that shack, damn it. To walk the path is to adventure on life, making life into an adventure. The frontier of relevance. Any road can become a path if your step is resolute and your thoughts quite alone. You and I are dissolving day by day. Dissolution is genetic, bodily, seemingly essential. Do, make, and say what you must before everything turns to sand. I just see a typo there. I've read this so many times I never spotted that. I'll try to fix that. Capital D on do. There's a sea below Mount Wildness. A howling thing roams the woods, and a woodsman's cottage on the near slope. I'd rather not know by instinct without a thread of honest reflection. Trails are courses. What trails do you follow? What paths do you blaze? I remember when I wrote that, and I was like, what paths do you blaze? I really had second thoughts about that one, but it still feels like it belongs. Honest virtue requires no accolade. Suppress or ignore appetite. We're all crippled and suffering. Hesitate long, and the path will be gone. Practice your art. Paths are formed by instinct, trails by consensus. I'm making a sign on the frontier of Mount Wildness. My hope is that it will help keep travelers safe, but not too safe. I almost did that. I reached out to a friend of mine who was a welder about making a sign to place up there at the border between the edge of deep water and deep water to fulfill that suggestion. I think he thought I was a little nuts when I told him what I wanted to do. The darkness is repelled by courage. Step towards it and it moves away, though one day it will not. Return by another way, an unknown way. The course of your first inclination is nothing more than a catalyst to action. They're all dying words. Make them count. Play a little longer outdoors before you at last must go in. Abandoned paths everywhere you look. Fast movement. With that last one, abandoned paths everywhere you look, that must have been inspired by the so many deserted and forgotten trails that I found while hiking in Japan. Trails that used to crisscross the mountains to connect the villages before the modern roads were built. Indeed, abandoned trails everywhere you look. Fast movement hinders progress. I would like to go back, when I get back, I would like to go back and explore some of those trails, but I'm really afraid that if I do, that's gonna be the end of me. I'm gonna run across a bear or hornets or fall off a cliff or something. They're dangerous. Fast movement hinders progress. Sanction is petty compensation for a lifetime upon the straight and narrow. Yeah. Oh boy, I see it so much now, especially now. I see that everywhere around me. You are not on the path if the way is very easy for very long. The most fearful thing is the distant howling. The path is fearful and dark. Failure is tolerable. Light your own way up the slopes of Mount Wildness, where the dawn never comes. Birds always fly along the path. Leaves always blow along the path. If you are ever uncertain how to start, simply follow the leaves and tread in the direction of bird flight. I remember writing those two, and they were separate. I wrote them like the first one, birds always fly along the path, leaves always blow along the way. I wrote that at one point. I'm walking down a mountain road, farm road. And then around the corner, I finished it with another muse strike. If you are ever uncertain how to start, simply follow the leaves and tread in the direction of bird flight. Indeed, these two belong together. They are separated by maybe 10 minutes of time. Yet I've got them separated here, yet they are indeed connected. And just two more to go. Father and son can walk the path, just never together. So true. And the last one. The surest sign you've left the path is when you meet another along the way. And then the poem again. The path of wildness is easy to find. The course of a stream, leaves blown in the wind, a beast's track through the brush, and the direction of our first inclination. I did it. Got through that whole chapter. It's hard to describe how this feels, this juncture in my life. You know, closing in on the end of my career and my life in America, knowing that I'll probably never live here again, never come back. This will all be the end. This is part of me. It's a very good part of me, and I'm not leaving in any sour means at all. It's been great. It was a great idea to come back. It really fulfilled so much of the potential for my whole family in coming back. Now it's like sitting down for the dessert course, and then it's like I keep asking myself, do I really deserve to have the dessert course? I know life can be difficult, and sometimes our hopes don't come true. I hope that I get to enjoy this next part of life. I hope that my family and I can safely make it back to Japan, that Yumiko and I can find a little farmhouse somewhere, that this whole retirement scheme and plan will work out, and we can really enjoy the time and do good. You know, I want to continue doing this, making these videos, continue expounding upon the message of going alone and the consequent good life creed, and continue and really, really, really have a lot of experiences like this, experiences that give me pause to catch my breath. Thank you for joining me. I think it's time to turn this off. I'll go back to the house. Yumiko should be up soon. We've got the day of freedom. We're all done. Our shopping is done. Our house cleaning is done. We can do whatever we want today. And I'm not going to venture to guess what that will be. It'll just be a day that will unfold. Practice for the days to come. I know that one thing for sure, it'll end with the high point of the day being the dinner that we will share this evening, which I can't wait to enjoy with her. Let's see if there's any comments before I sign off. Andy says, the darkness is repelled by courage. Step towards it and it moves away, though one day it will not. Speaks deeply to me. There have been many times when courage failed me and the darkness won. Oh, that's a quote from the book. Yeah. The darkness is repelled by courage. Step towards it and it moves away, though one day it will not. Yeah. Well, what I meant by that when I wrote that was that you can keep pushing, we can keep pushing forward into what scares us, and it'll step back sometimes, but one day it's going to have its way with us. The darkness will get the last word finally. But that leads me to failure is tolerable, and I love that. Well, yeah, boy. You know, it can not just tolerable, but appreciated. Andy, I failed so much in life. I mean, the greater measure of my life has been just awful failure in every capacity. Except I've always had a good heart. I've never done anything out of malice could I say evil? Where evil would be making efforts in pursuit of in direction not in the interest of the conscious well-being of others, right? Deliberately trying to hurt others. I've never done that. I have hurt others, but it's been accidental because of my own stupidity or my foolishness or like. But so maybe if I had been an evil person, so to speak, using the definition that I just gave, maybe I wouldn't feel good about myself now. But given that I've made so many mistakes, but they've never been evil mistakes, they've just been stupid mistakes, and the balance always seems to recover. I mean, the darkness pushes back, but then it'll come for me, and I know it's coming for me. That's why just a moment ago I said, you know, who knows if I'm going to get to enjoy the dessert portion, because the darkness not being evil, the darkness being disease and death, may be right around the corner for me. Sorry, that's kind of a word salad, a lot of stuff. But thanks for joining me, Andy, and I'm glad you got the book. I do think about you, and I'm glad to hear from you, and I'm glad that I hope you're doing well. I wish you all the best. Okay, take care. Be safe, but not too safe, as the man says. Bye-bye.